Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome to Anchor of Hope. How are you all doing tonight? So good to see some new faces, and thank you for being here. It's a privilege for all of us to be able to bring you into worship before the presence of God. So feel free to stand with us if you would like to worship the Lord. And hello to everybody that's out there if you're listening, wherever you are.
I love you, Lord, for your mercy never fails me. All my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, of the goodness of God. goodness of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire in darkest nights. You are close like no other. I've known you as a father. I know you as a friend. I have lived in the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. Your goodness is running after me. Your goodness is running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after me. Your goodness is running after me. Your goodness is running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after me. All my life you have been faithful.
Yes, you have.
All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. Oh, I will sing of the goodness of God.
All right, welcome to Anchor of Hope. Here at Orange Coast Community Church, we have a lot of things going on during the week. Let's start with our Sunday service at 9:30 a.m. in the sanctuary. Wednesday's Bible study is at 7 p.m. in the fellowship hall. It's a very good Bible study led by Pastor Rick. Every first and third Thursday at 7 p.m. in the fellowship hall, we have men's group. And every second and fourth Thursday at 6:30, we have Turning Point USA's apologetics class. Every second and fourth Saturday in the fellowship hall at 9 a.m., we have a Rise and Shine Bible study for women. And then Saturday night service at 6 p.m. in the fellowship hall. It's with Pastor Rick, and it's the chance you get to ask the pastor questions. Now, on Fridays, we have two things going on besides Anchor of Hope. At 5 o'clock or 5:30, we have Anchor in Hope with Mel and Clyde. It's a discipleship to become disciples. Very good. A lot of the members of the church are part of that, so I encourage you to come and join. Also, if you're watching online and want information about Anchor and Hope, you can send a message to the church as well, or notify your director if you're one of the homes we deal with, and I can make sure the message gets to the appropriate people. And that seems to be it. All right, so this is March, and we are now moving on to step 3. Now, the first 2 steps are 2 of the main foundational steps. One is admitting you have a problem. Now, as we read and learned over the first month in January, that is one of the hardest things to ever do as a person, admit you have a problem. Now, the second step was coming to believe in a power greater than yourself that can restore you to sanity. Now, most of us in that alcohol or drug addiction part of recovery, we know how crazy our mindset gets. And that all recovery is part of a spiritual and mental problem. Now we're going to be moving on to the third step. And the third step is made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. Now, in doing a background study of this, I found the 2 scriptures that in AA, the clergyman that helped Bill and Bob write this, he wrote this step using 2 biblical verses. The first one is Proverbs 3, verses 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and learn not on your own understanding. In all your ways, submit to Him, and He will make your path straight. The second one to this that they used was Matthew 16, verse 24. Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. So for this understanding of step 3, I've broken it down to 5 points that we will need to go over. And the first one is the turning point, recognizing you are not in control. Step 3 begins with the decision in recovery and spiritual growth. Requires a moment when we realize that our way is not working. Now, I can't speak for anybody. I can always just speak for myself. And that's what is very important in recovery. No 2 programs are ever going to be exactly the same. And that no 2 recovery has the same story. And that the experiences will always be different. And it's your experience. Many of us have tried to run our lives, use our own wisdom, our own strength, and our own willpower. Yet the truth is that self-will alone cannot get you to recover. Now, like I said, I will always only speak about myself or experiences that I have met when talking with people in recovery. And one of the most common things in any recovery is hearing the word self-will. And that everybody has all the answers. Everybody can fix everything. And if this is true, then we wouldn't need God. But here's the truth. The more I tried to do it myself, the more I destroyed my life. My self-will does not work. Not because there's something that I can't figure out. It's because God's purpose isn't involved. When it's self-will, it's always your desires involved, your thoughts, your wants. I think that is a big problem in the world today. Is everybody wants what they want, not what God wants and what's best for people. If we could focus on that, we'd have a lot better society, in my opinion. The Bible echoes this reality, and Proverbs reminds us not to lean on our own understanding. Our own understanding is limited, clouded by fear, pride, and hurt. God sees the whole picture. Now, God has always seen what's going to happen with you. He's given you this free will to make those choices. I mean, you never had to drink. You never had to use drugs. The choices were always part of that free will that we took advantage of. And now, there's a thing in AA, it's called playing the video forward. And that after a while, it's almost like we can see what God sees. We know how it's going to turn out. And that I have seen it in my own life. I have been sober for 3 months. Everything's getting back to normal. I actually have money in my pocket. And decide, you know what, I can party one more time. And I'll think the video, as my sponsor used to say, play the video all the way through. And I would. And the video went like this. I'm going to see the dealer. I'm going to have a great night, and I'm probably going to end up in jail. I'll end up sitting in jail for a couple weeks, maybe a month. At that time, I wasn't even smart enough to realize the more times you get busted, the longer your stay in jail gets. I mean, that's the insanity in our mind. But God sees this too. God is always viewing what we're going through. To be honest with you, a lot of people, especially in the addiction field, don't realize this, but God's walking with you through it the whole time. And I learned this, especially when I was dealing with my combat situation. I remember asking a couple of the pastors of this church and telling them that God wasn't in Iraq with me or Afghanistan with me. And then over time, I learned God was with me every step of the way. He saw the pain I went through. He sees the pain you go through. But he's not going to fully interfere because he still wants you to do one simple thing. Choose him. And that he doesn't want you to choose, oh, I just want to do it because I'm in pain today. He wants this full, just give in to him. And it's an interesting concept because a couple days ago, I was talking to Mel about this. We were talking about last week's speaker and the freedom. When you just give up and give to God. It is an amazing feeling. And that feeling where I don't know if anybody else, when you're out there, have you ever used the words, oh, I'll make it happen? And you know how great it feels when you're finally sick and tired, you're over it, and you don't have to think anymore. Just let someone else lead it and wherever it ends up. And you know, when you do that, I'm going to be honest with you. In those situations, God's like, all right, you're ready. I'm going to step in. In my situation, the last time 13 years ago, I was going to do probably 3 years because it was multiple times of being caught. And they were just tired of it. They were going to add on habitual criminal. And you know what? I'd already gave up and was going to follow God. Started reading the Bible in jail instead of using it to do push-ups. And I was sitting there learning all this stuff. Didn't understand it, of course. But God seen that there was a willingness. And that I was giving up myself and trying something new. So that final time I went into the court thinking, okay, they're going to sentence me and I'm just going to sign because anybody that's been in jail knows one thing. They'd rather get upstate as soon as possible. So you know you're going, let's just sign today and the sooner I can get upstate where at least I feel better. But I walked into that courtroom and the same judge that I saw on a couple occasions turns around and goes, you know what, I think going to another recovery house would do you good. And I did not want to go to a recovery house. To be honest with you, yes, I quit, but my mind was still telling me I don't want to let someone guide my life. But then I decided to go. And then I found out they forgot I went to a recovery center for 2 weeks, and then my probation officer realized they forgot to put it in the court order. So he's like, you don't have to be there anymore after 2 weeks. This is God doing for me what I can't do for myself. But I'll be honest with you, I got scared. And I remember calling Ron. I'm like, I don't know what to do. And so we made some phone calls. And that went to another sober living house. And the sober living house I picked, I thought it was going to be just, hey, you come in, here's your time. You got to be out of the house this time, be home by this time, pay your rent, everybody's good. No, this house had some rules that I wish the military had. We'd be more disciplined. And it worked out for me, because then I still stayed with God. But I had to do a few other things that I didn't want to do, but I did it. And see, that's kind of what God's looking for. And that we live on a life that is based on nothing but self. We always want to do what we want to do, not what someone else thinks is best for, especially God. To be honest, most of us, that's the last thing we're bringing up at that time. Now it's the greatest topic in the world to me. So what is step 3? Step 3 is about honesty. It's not about weakness. It's about honesty. You know, they were talking about this today, about being honest with thy neighbor and how you treat your neighbor and being honest, being accountable. We were talking about that today in Anchor in Hope. And you know, that is very true. And that you have to be honest with yourself. You know, when I came to this church, Orange Coast, the one thing I did different is I never hid that, yeah, I had a drug problem. And that I'd been to jail. And you know why that is? Because I don't want that to have power over me. And that I want my experience for the young men that are coming behind me. And that I always tease them, you don't want to go to jail. You don't want to go to prison. And that my experience can help them, but in the same process, it's helping me. And that's what being thy neighbor is, being honest with them, and then showing them the experience you have learned. So the second topic that I wanted to talk about was surrender is not defeat, it's freedom. The world often teaches us that surrender is a failure. But in God's kingdom, surrender is the beginning of freedom. Now, I have this joke with my wife all the time about France and that they surrendered to everybody. And so I always played that in my mind, that surrender is a sign of weakness. But you know what's something that most people don't realize about France? They have made friends with everybody and are always protected by someone. And they just surrendered. And that's what God's doing. You surrender to him. He will protect you. The greatest protection he gave me is the men of Orange Coast Community Church. And that God gave me a book I can read to learn what he says everything and what he wants me to follow. The men of Orange Coast showed me how to live it. I didn't know how to pay bills. I mean, most drug addicts don't pay bills. That's how come we end up on drugs. If we were paying our bills, we wouldn't be that high. And I did not know how to treat a person and have a normal conversation. I didn't know how to treat a relationship. And you know, out in that world, relationships with the women are not the same as you're supposed to be doing it as a normal person. To be honest with you, how we treat them is not good. And how they treat themselves is not good. I mean, a real man would step up for a woman and say, hey, you know what? This ain't good for you. It ain't good for me. Let's stop. Not in my world at that time. My world is, if that's how you want to be, I'll help you go that way. And we can party together. There's a lot that's involved in surrendering. When you surrender, you get the greatest father. Now, most people in prison do not have the greatest experience with family. But you know what? God has been the greatest father out there. When you look at what he has done from the very beginning, created a planet for us. He has created water, food, animal, everything for us. It does him no good. When you look at it, he's internal in everything. He doesn't need animals. He doesn't need a dog that loves you. He doesn't need a spouse to talk to. Everything that's been created, he did for us that blesses him. Jesus taught us this very clearly in Matthew 16:25. Whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. Now, in recovery of any type, not just drugs, any kind of recovery, and that you have to give up your old way of life. That is a death. I mean, when you look at it, you have to change everything. The one thing my sponsor always told me is you only have to change one thing in sobriety, and that's everything. And when you look at it that way, it makes complete sense. I can't be the man God made me to be if I'm still holding on to a piece of who I used to be. Because it doesn't work out good for anybody. I'll be the first one to admit, at that time, I did not benefit anybody in society, especially God. But now I get to do those things because I honor God with just a little bit. And my first thing was giving up the old life. But what happens when you give up your old life? There's a new life. And that, I never understood that part when I first got into AA that I am because they always say I'm an alcoholic. But one of the men at the church said, no, you're not an alcoholic anymore. You're a new creation in Christ. Amen. And you know what? Since that day I was taught that, I have never spoke at an AA meeting without saying that. Because my old life does not have power over me. God changed that. He gave me a new life. My new life benefits society as well as God. I don't have a big dream of speaking in a field and turning 1,000 people into Christians. That's not my goal in life. But you know that feeling when one person just says, tell me more. That is when I get excited. That's when I want to get up here and do it again. Maybe for the next 2 years, no one will ask that question. But if it happens again, it was well worth it. Because sobriety isn't about everybody. It's about one person at a time. It's one day at a time. And we're going to get into that a little bit down the road, so I don't want to go too much into that. So when we're clinging tight to control, we live in anxiety, fear, and exhaustion. But when we place our lives in God's hands, something remarkable happens. The burdens are lifted. When you look at that, everything I caused kept me up with the anxiety. I cannot look anybody in the face and honestly say, God did that to me. And, I'm so upset, it's all God's fault. Not once have I ever said, because I became a Christian or because I got sober, my life is even worse. And I don't know what I was thinking. And as a matter of fact, and I tell this to all my sponsees, as well as, because my sponsor told me this. If your life does not get better, staying off drugs and finding a higher power, or in my case, finding God, he's like, I'll buy you the next baggie. And I was just joking, and I'm like, you're going to go broke with me. And I'll be honest with you, there has never been a day that that's the best decision out there, is to go get loaded again. Now, I'm not going to tell you getting sober is easy and everything's a bed of roses, because it's not. It's a struggle. Your mind and even your body tells you no, that there's a better way. Pain happens. You know, I was joking around with Heather one time, and I was telling her, I'm like, you know, since I got sober, I actually feel my body, and I don't like it. I used to love being on drugs. I didn't feel nothing. I didn't care. But that's how powerful the drug is over someone. And even if it's not drugs in your life, if you're recovering from anger or trauma, you know, you get used to that life of trauma as well. And that the confusion, the chaos. You know, chaos is the most addicting thing in the world over drugs. It's not the addiction to the drug, it's the addiction to the chaos that comes with it. That is something that takes over your life. I love sitting there making everybody miserable, watching everybody fight, and just sitting back and watching. That was enjoyment to me because I like chaos. Like I said, I do not speak for anybody else on their recovery. This is my recovery. So let's look at the third point. Trusting God with our whole life. The third step is about making one decision in a meeting or a prayer once spoken. It becomes a daily practice. Now, have you ever heard in AA or any of the 12-step programs? One day at a time. And then, you know, I didn't like that in AA. But my mentality, I didn't like a lot of things about AA or the 12 steps. But when they make it that simple, one day at a time, you know what? I can screw up today and start again tomorrow. And I'll tell you, at the beginning, I screwed up everything. I was given directions. You know what? Go to a meeting in the morning by my sponsor. Very next day, I woke up 6 a.m. to go to the meeting. I'm like, no. So then at the end of the day, I had to kind of review how my day went and let my higher power at that time know what I did wrong. And even at the beginning, there was still more wrong than right. And I remember writing that down in my journal and showing it a week later to my sponsor. And he's like, the good thing about it is you got to write the next day and the next day. And as you watch that, what you're putting in goes down. And then it became, I didn't screw up every day, maybe once a week. And then maybe once a month. And then I became a Christian and I found out I screw up every day. And that because I'm not perfect, but I now know why. And I can't blame the drugs, I just gotta blame me. Because I still have that ability to want my needs met, not God's needs. If I give everything, my whole life to God and let Him deal with it, get through a pretty good day. When I let God guide my thoughts, I can't, like I said, I'll never speak for anybody else. My thoughts are weird than that. Like, I have sat there at the beginning with Pastor Dave. I argued with him for days about Bigfoot and that. Or aliens. And that's just how my mind works. You know what? I still think about Bigfoot, aliens. But to be honest with you, I don't care how it ends up with Bigfoot or aliens. And I still have this dream Bigfoot's going to show up at my door, and the first thing I'm doing is driving him to Pastor Dave's house. And But see, that's the good thing, because life is great and I can have those little dreams. Now, the only dreams I used to have is hopefully I'll get out of jail this time, or hopefully someone will want me to clean so I can get a top ramen while I'm in. And those were my hopes. Now I got great hopes. And that things that aren't going to end me or end me up asking for 2 scoops for coffee in the morning. You know, recovery and faith both grow through daily surrender. And that's what you have to do. The more every day I think about God and go towards Him, and that there is growth, and my day gets better. But there's growth for God as well. See, you know how I always talked about being there and watching the chaos? You know, God likes to sit where He's at and say, yeah, that's what I did, and watch everything get better. You know, the one thing I always find amazing is, you know how we clap when celebrating here in AA or at church? You know, God and the angels celebrate every time a new Christian takes to Him. It's a party up there. And that's because there's growth. Luke 22, verse 42, not my will, but yours be done. That is the hardest thing for anybody in recovery to do. And that is to feel that way. Because my life has been my will. My sponsee, when I talk to them, they still run on self-will. And it's their will. You know, I've talked to a bunch of sponsees over the years, but anybody in AA will recognize this. Every time someone gets sober, first thing they say is, oh, I got to get home to my wife and kids. You just spent the last 9 months running around town. You never seen your wife and kid. Now all of a sudden you get 1 day sober and you're going to be Father of the Year. And, you know, that's the hardest thing, because it's our will, not God's will. You know what God's will is in this situation? Leave them alone. Let me take care of them, and let me take care of you. I have put these people, you know, there's these meetings, there's churches all around 24 hours a day. Do you know now in America you can go to a meeting 24 hours a day in person or online? And that you have no excuse for not to be in a meeting. I found that out. During COVID, they started this online meetings. Am I a big fan of them? No, I like to be in person. I'm an in-person kind of person myself. I like to be there to see the person. And the sad part is, it's not. When I go there in person, it's because I get to see exactly where they're at in life. Now, for me, I can remember that day, my first meeting, and I'm shaking and not sure if it's because of fear or withdrawals. Or the fact that I didn't know most meetings, coffees are free. I left $1 and some guy walked up there and grabbed it when I got my first cup of coffee at a meeting. And I didn't realize that part of recovery is making sure coffee's there. We're going to need something to keep through the meeting. And little things like that is just how our mind works. Even the Son trusted the Father. When you look back at Jesus, He was given 100% to the Father. And that's what He's setting the example for us. If He can do it, being the perfect person, what do you think someone that's less than perfect should be doing? And it's a great gift that you have a Father that you trust so much, because in the world of addiction, the world of pain, the place of trauma, trust is the hardest thing to have. We were talking about that tonight. And that me and Dave talk about it all the time on some of the places we're going to be doing Bible studies. And that you have to find that way in, earn that little bit of trust. And that's all it needs, even with God. You give that little bit, he'll open that door. God's going to step in, and it's going to explode. My life exploded. Like I said, I've never met a person that came in and said, church was the worst thing for me. Now let's go to the fourth one. God's care is greater than our brokenness. One of the most beautiful phrases in step 3 is the care of God. It does not say turn our lives over to the punishment, judgment, or condemnation of God. It says the care. Now, I like to argue with people now that I'm a Christian in AA because they're like, no, haven't anybody read the Old Testament? It's all judgment, it's all torture, it's all pain. And I'm like, no. You know what it really is? He loved you so much that he was all willing to take all the evil out at that time, whatever it took, so that you had a safe place when you get your chance. That isn't judgment, that's not punishment, that's not evil, that's love. Nothing God has ever done is not about love. In counseling, we learned that tough love is probably the greatest love that we have abandoned. We are so scared to tell our children that they're wrong, we just let them be right. And we just walk away from the situation. And I can't talk for the newer generation because I'm an older, but getting slapped around taught me a lesson real quick. And you know what? I honestly now look back at that. Now, I'm not a big fan of my father. Everybody who knows me personally knows that. But I do now know somewhere deep down in his own way he loved me. It might have came out what might have been abuse. He did the best he could. Do I have to accept it? No. But you know what? I have to accept that God wants me to care about him as a man. Because care isn't optional. You don't care for someone, a whole race or a whole everything like a human beings. You can't just care for just one or two. You got to pick the whole thing. You like dogs? You got to like all dogs. Doesn't mean you have to invite them into your house and you got to feed them, but you'll respect them. That's how life and God cares. God never judged me for just my bad. And that he showed me where I was going wrong, gave me a little bit of tough love. Because I did have to pay for my punishment. And that nowhere in the Bible does it say that I'm just going to wipe the punishment out of your life right now and it's going to be all blessings. It doesn't say that. And that is what it says, is that your life will get better. And mine did, even with the punishments. You know, the one thing, and I told this in the last group, that happened to me. I was sober for 2 years and found out I had a warrant and had to go back and serve time. And, you know, I went back into jail and my pride, my ego was all ruined. And I ended up doing my time, paying for my debt to society, and I got out. My mind said, I'm going to just go buy another bag and start all over. But you know what? God had already interfered in my life so well, and I'm not going to say I didn't do it. I went and bought the drugs. I had them in my pocket. And then something took over and said I didn't want to give up those 2 years. And I poured it out into the sewer system. And that went back to sober living. But you know what the first thing I did is I told someone about it so that it didn't have power over me. And that I didn't want to not only let myself down now, I had found God. I didn't want to let him down. So when we surrender to God, we do not lose ourselves. And we find ourselves held by grace. The greatest feeling is knowing that people might not like you. It's okay. You know what I learned from going to church? I don't care what anybody else thinks. To be honest, it does not matter. It will not affect my day. And that the one thing I worry that how they think is God. Because that's going to be internal. So, yes, I am still a people pleaser at times. But really, the toughest lesson I learned, I'm not going to make everybody happy. And that you just can't. But that's okay. That's not my job. That's God's job to make them happy. Mine is to do my part, and if God asks me to be part of making someone happy, that's what we do. So the fifth and final part is living step 3 in everyday life. What does that mean? Turning our will over to God might look like this. Asking God for guidance before making a decision. You know, one thing about addiction is we're instant gratification. And that I have made more decisions just on one thought, and it always ends up bad or never works out. But you know, stepping back, praying about it, talking to God with it, and doing something I never did before, and that's wait for an answer. You know, I don't have to get an answer. Usually, in my head, by the time I get an answer, I have moved on to something else in my mind. I'm trying some other instant gratification thing. So that's doing it with God. And going to God on a daily basis, that's what it looks like, prayer. Reading the Bible. You know how you get sober, they told me in AA? Read the big book. You know what? How do you find God? Read the Bible. It's simple. It's been here the whole time. Remember earlier I said that I used to use it for push-ups? Do you know the most common thing in jail is a Bible and not to read? Because you put it next to you and you can do deeper push-ups if you use 2 Bibles. And you know what else they use it for in jail, and I hate to say it? For cigarettes. You can wrap tobacco and then smoke it. Why? Because it burns so slow. But this is what the difference is between then and now. Now I use that book just to get my mind off of what I'm doing. You know how often I've been up and couldn't sleep and just decided to read the Bible? And had a good night's sleep. Less hours asleep, but had a better night's sleep than I normally do. Because God's rewarded me for doing the little things. Go to Him. Don't go to drugs. Don't go to this. Don't go to alcohol. Don't go to a creep. Just all the different things. There's little rewards. You know, I used to sit there and thinking sleeping was a big problem with me, and that's why I did drugs. And you know what? It's not true. I liked being awake because my mind told me I'd miss something if I slept. That's really what a tweaker does. We're so scared we're going to miss something that we'll stay up 9-10 days on drugs and then start hallucinating. But here's something that I do now, and it's less sleep. I only get about 4 or 5 hours sleep a night. Why? Because the first thing, I owe it because the Bible tells me I need to honor my wife. When she goes to sleep, I lay down next to her. And I'm a night person. 2, 3 in the morning, I'll get up and start studying my homework or working on a sermon. And you know what? I'm honoring God by putting in the work. And it's also a quiet time where I get to focus just on God. And I'll tell you, like I said, I'll get a couple hours sleep, but that's the greatest sleep I ever get. And instead of having the dreams where you're doing drugs or ending up in jail, I'm dreaming about what I read in the Bible. You know what? One of the dreams I always want to do, I want to go back to the Old Testament and really see what it's like. And I want to see those stories because that's what excites me now. Letting go of resentment and trusting God with justice. You know, biggest thing in society today, especially in the jails, is retaliation. And who is it that he hurt a person down the street that I've never talked to in my life, but it's my job to retaliate? And that is the craziest thing. You know, God's going to take care of this. Everyone on this planet is going to answer to God one day. God didn't say, hey, it's your job to take him out. God said, I got this. You know, another thing we have a problem with that we need God for is admitting when we're wrong. Pride, ego. Two of the things God does not like is the two things that we do the most as a species. And I used to hate admitting I'm wrong. I still do. Ain't gonna lie. It's hard at times. And because I always think I'm right. But you know what? There is times where you can't even sit there and come up with a good excuse. And it's like, okay, I was wrong. But that's hard for us because we live on pride and ego. You know, biggest thing I ever had when I worked with the guys coming out of prison is the first thing they want to tell me is about their jailhouse credit or their prison credit. I can walk any yard in this place, in this state. Go ahead. If you want to oppress a criminal, go ahead. I'm like, it's all you got to do. I even told this to one of the guys I was working with. If you want to go back and impress them, slap your probation officer or your parole officer. He'll take you right back. And you know, trying not to have credit, I still end up with credit. But you know what the credit I have today that I love more than anything is being called a man of God. And there is nothing to me bigger than that. And it's not something I have to say, it's when someone else notices it. And no, choosing humility over control. That one's a tough one. To give up control means to give up everything. But to humble yourself, to show that you're worthy, and that is the hardest thing. Especially as we get adults, we're supposed to show the example. But you know what? More adults need to understand that more than any child. And children, they have a pass on this section because they still have to learn. We have no excuse. But we just don't want to give it up. Control is something. You know, have you ever been in a car with someone and they think, especially when Heather does this to me all the time. We're driving, she's in the passenger seat, pushing on a brake that's not there. And but she's going to try, like, she wants that control. You know, when she's driving, I want to reach the steering wheel. I want my control back. That's just who we are. But you know what one of my favorite songs is? Jesus, Take the Wheel. And that's how we need to be looking at life. You know what? I can't control it anymore. Jesus, take the wheel, guide me, get me safe, get me home. Recovery programs teach that wisdom because it reflects a deep spiritual truth. Healing begins when surrender begins. And that's very true. And from day one, you only have to do one thing. I remember Pastor Dave teaching me this. Just give your life to God. Let's talk about it. And you know what? That was giving up control because that's the first time I let someone else make a decision for me. And it was God using him as his messenger. You know, there's a joke that me and Dave have that not too many people know, but me and Dave. I was such a terrible Christian when I first got here. I called him up to find out where Easter eggs are in the Bible, because I was sure I can prove it to a guy at Sober Living that Easter eggs are in the Bible. It didn't work out well for me. Step 3 invites us into a profound spiritual transformation. So when we look at that, we have admitted we are alcoholics and we have a problem. We admitted there's something higher than ourselves. Now we get to let what we find out is higher than us take control. Now, when you do that, there is a change. You can't help but see a change. Has anybody ever looked online on Facebook and they see the person that while they're on drugs and then 3 weeks off of drugs? The before and after pictures. There's a transformation there. Because they look, over in the first one, they look, as we joke around, they look like Skeletor. And that. Over here, they're already talking about being a model again. But see, God makes that possible because life can get better real quick. You can get healthy real quick the minute you put down those drugs. Now, remember how we were talking about chaos and living in that world of chaos? When we give this up to God, chaos starts to calm down. And the biggest problem I have today that causes chaos is being a half hour too early, or is it being late still when you get to church or going somewhere? You know, I love what they're teaching in Anchor and Hope because it is so true. Something that was said tonight, if you're not early, you're late. And that was a military thing I learned. But you know what? To this day, I still use that. Because, again, in my mind, I might miss something. But if I'm at the church an hour or a half hour early, I'm not missing anything that's going on here. And I gain a little more because I get to do something else. I get to fellowship. And I get to learn about another person, what they're going through, what they might need help with. How can I help? And if I can't help, just like in this room, there's multiple people I can go to and say, I don't know what to do. What would you recommend? Or maybe even if it needs to be, pass it off to someone else. Hey, they need help. This is lessening the chaos. Because in our past, instead of calming it down, we try to make it bigger. I mean, I have tried to fix problems that I didn't even know what the problem was, but I had an answer on how to fix it. The promise of faith and recovery is this. God can guide a surrendered life better than we can control it. Now I'm going to end this with step 3 prayer in AA. So it's God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. Now when we hear that is such a freedom that we get to have as long as we're doing the little things that God asks us. And let's look at that. I would, thy love and thy way of life. My way of life did not work. Try God's. So far I've tried it, great. And that it is more enjoyable. To be honest with you, because I gave my life up, I found out what love is. And I thought I knew what love was. But love is that unconditional love that I never had before. I mean, God has given us everything. He has showed that ultimate love. And now he gives that chance for us to have it. So tonight, as we move on to the third step for the rest of this month, we will have a speaker next week. Pastor Bob will be speaking. I just want you to remember one thing. When you look at your life, think of your will versus what God's will is. And I guarantee you, God's will goes to a better path than what your will wants. Do you need everything that your mind tells you need? No. And that, will God give you everything that you need? Yes. So I'm pretty sure his is the way to go. If you can find anything better, I'm going to make this offer to anybody here. If going back to your old life is better, I will pay for that first bag. And I'll even give you a ride there. But I can guarantee it because God has never lied to us. There is a better life. And these 12 steps will lead you in that life, as long as you're willing to do the part you have to do to get there. We're only at 3. We still have 9 more to go. And they do get tougher. This is technically the easy part, because the next couple, 4th, 5th, and 6th, get a little rough. But it's more enjoyable than that for us, because we live in a world of chaos. So we're going to enjoy those steps. And Father, we just thank you for tonight. We want your will to be done. As it was said, I offer myself to thee. What does that mean you want from us? Just a little bit. Give our lives to you. You got control from there. We just ask that you bless us, protect us, and guide us on the journey that you have for us. Your will is going to be accomplished because we have the strength and the ability to do it. And it's again because of you. You have created this, you have set it in motion, and it's just our job to obey. We thank you for this time you have put together. In Jesus' name, amen.